Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. This is sad, but he appeared to freeze last Wednesday. People are very concerned about Mitch McConnell's health and well-being, what is going on with him. He was talking to, last Wednesday, he was speaking to reporters, and he ended up freezing for quite some time. Let's actually watch the video. It's kind of crazy.
I had a hard time hearing you.
That's okay. What are your thoughts on running for re-election in 2026?
What are my thoughts about what?
Running for re-election in 2026.
That's
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026?
yes.
All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute. Senator Benny.
Yep.
I'm gonna head outside, so come with us. Okay.
Yeah, okay. I think he answered his own question. He probably should not be running again in 2026. He is 81 years old. So I definitely have a lot of sympathy for him, and obviously he's got some sort of ailment that is affecting him, although we're going to get into it. The doctors are kind of like, no, everything's fine, nothing to see here. And we'll get into the doctor's statement, but it's definitely time to retire or to step aside. Certainly don't rerun like Dianne Feinstein, who's rerun however many times when she should have retired a long, long time ago. If you remember Mitch McConnell, this is not the first time he froze. He did again late July. Watch this.
Operation and a string of
Are you good, Mitch?
Okay, Mitch. Anything else you want to say, or should we just go back to your office? Do you want to say anything else to the press? Go back.
Go ahead, John.
I'll take a break. Let's go back to
Go ahead, John.
Okay, so twice he's had this episode. This is what his doctor had to say. This is the attending physician for Congress. He wrote September 5th. He released this letter. Senator Mitch McConnell, who, by the way, is the Republican leader of the U.S. Senate. So he's like a major, major player in the GOP. Says, "Dear sir, my examination of you following your August 30th brief episode, including several medical evaluations, brain MRI imaging, EEG study, and consultations with several neurologists for a comprehensive neurology assessment. There's no evidence that you have a seizure disorder or that you experienced a stroke, TIA, or movement disorder such as Parkinson's disease. There are no changes recommended in treatment protocols as you continue recovery from your March 2023 fall. Very truly yours." I think it's pretty obvious there's something wrong with Mitch McConnell, right? I mean, I get it if they can't find it. They're doing all these studies, they're not seeing anything, but there's clearly something wrong with him. There's clearly something not right, and they would need to get to the bottom of that. I would hope that his family is telling him it's time to retire, it's time to step aside, and it's time to come home. The big question everyone's asking is, can he be removed from office? So we know with the president of the United States that if they become incapacitated for any reason, we've had this happen a couple of times when presidents have had to go under for surgery and the 25th Amendment has to be invoked, and the powers are given to the vice president for a period of time. In order to do the 25th Amendment on a president, the cabinet, the majority of the president's cabinet needs to agree that the president cannot serve for is unable to serve for whatever reason. And going under anesthesia is one of those reasons, which several of the presidents have done, and they've temporarily had to give power to the vice president, and then they gain it back when they come back too. They could do that permanently if they felt like it. It hasn't been done, but they could say, "You're really out of it, Joe Biden. And it's time to, like, we just don't think you're physically or mentally fit, able to be president at all." So they evoke the 25th Amendment and they're essentially permanently removed from that post as long as the majority of their cabinet agrees. I guess it's careful. You got to be careful who you pick to be in your cabinet because they could stage a mutiny on you, right? But when it comes to members of Congress, so in the House and the Senate, there is actually no way to remove them from office. There's no way. Mitch McConnell could have a stroke and be completely unavailable. He could be in a vegetative state. He could be in a coma. He could be, as long as he's alive, uh, there is no way to remove him from office. There's no mechanism for this. The only time that members of Congress have had their seats replaced is if they die. Then I believe their spouse inherits it. I think if I'm not, or the governor, it might depend on the state. There might be some different rules state by state on that one on who replaces that seat. It could be that the governor appoints somebody and in the meantime maybe their spouse runs it, or maybe it's just that the spouse has taken over the seat oftentimes until the governor puts somebody else in. So they have to die. The only other way that we've seen members of Congress have their seats, they're considered vacated and they get replaced, is if the person who was elected never was sworn in. And that's happened a couple of times where somebody was on the ballot, but they died before the election and they ended up getting elected, but they of course cannot actually be sworn in which case their seat is determined vacated, and then there's a special election that is held to replace their seat. So, or if the person dies before they're able to get to office. So only if they're able to, something happens, or you could, I suppose, be in a coma. I believe that's happened once or twice, where the person they're alive, but they're just unable to be sworn in. Something's happened to them and they can't be sworn in, and in which case their seat is deemed vacated and there's a special election. But otherwise, there's no way to replace them. So Mitch McConnell's got 2.5 years roughly. So until, so let's see, 2 more years or 3 or something left in the Senate. And this is how he's in bad shape. He's not the only one. Dianne Feinstein's obviously in really bad shape. She keeps thinking she's going to run because she has like dementia or Alzheimer's or something. So she's like, I'm running again. And people keep trying. Well, no, remember, but she can't remember. Remember, you said you're not going to run again. We convinced you not to run again. But all she can remember is, no, I'm a senator and I'm running again. So it gets tricky. It gets tricky. And then, of course, there's a lot of players behind these people who would like them to run again and win because they're now the ones actually pulling the strings. They're the people behind the scenes who are actually running that seat and doing all the legwork. And the person who won the election is just a puppet. And that's very dangerous because that's some unelected person in the background, some shadow government that's running that person's position. And that's also very, very scary. So there's got to be a better way. We obviously need to work on some way to disqualify people from running again, or somehow getting them out of their seats. But there's nothing at this point. And I think maybe it would even be Congress that has to vote on that. And are they going to vote on that? Are they going to vote to remove themselves from power? Not likely. They're the most ineffective branch of government as it is. You'd think for them to be able to do something like that, even less likely. I want to play this other clip for you. This is, again, another old person in office that people are really worried about their mental health. Here's Biden. He walked earlier this week out of a Medal of Honor ceremony before the whole thing was even over. Watch this. Look at him, he's all confused. He's like, what do we do? What do we do?
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me
All right. So, again, there's at least a mechanism to remove a president from office. They're not likely to do that. We're going to get into some stuff later in the show regarding Biden and his approval ratings and whatnot, but no way to, wishing Mitch McConnell. I mean, whether you like the guy or you agree with him or not, I certainly don't. He's one of my least favorite people in Congress, but I do feel for him as far as his medical concerns, and I hope that he's well and healthy. And but I also hope he returns back to his family and passes the baton to somebody new in the Senate to take over as the leader of the GOP in the Senate. That would be my thinking at this point. All right, guys, I want to tell you about forpatriots.com. This is a company that is dedicated to helping Americans prepare for whatever comes their way. So whether it's a natural disaster or another pandemic, knock on wood, let's hope that doesn't happen, or even just supplies to get you through summer and winter, 4Patriots has the products you need. They offer a wide range of survival gear like thermal blankets, generators, water filtration kits. They also have many choices of survival food kits that range in size from 72-hour kits to a year supply of food. I really am a big advocate of this. I think everybody should have survival kits, at least 72 hours at minimum, to get you through whatever it might be. A backpack that is just packed with emergency supplies that you can get the heck out of wherever it is, wherever you are, and you could survive. If something happens, a natural disaster, you can't get to the grocery store. There's no emergency people. There's all of these things could happen, and we see them happen all the time to a variety of places around the country. So I do think it's really smart to get yourself at least some level of emergency gear, some sort of protection, and ideally, at least a couple of weeks, but at minimum 72 hours. And if you're really, really like gung-ho and proactive, and I do know these people, a year's supply. I know lots and lots of people with a year's supply of food in my home state of Idaho. So I definitely think you should get yourself prepared. Use the promo code Kim at checkout, and you're going to get 10% off your order. So visit forpatriots.com and use that code Kim to get 10% off your order.